Ambassador Kim Ji-won walked slowly through the massive doors of the Federation Council chambers. The room was enormous, with curved walls that stretched up so high they disappeared into shadows. Strange alien delegates filled floating seats that hovered in perfect circles around the central speaking platform. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others had multiple eyes or wings that shimmered with colors humans had no names for. For 37 years, Kim had stood in this same spot, speaking for all of humanity. Her black diplomatic robes felt heavier today, as if they carried the weight of every human life in the galaxy. She had learned to keep her face calm and peaceful, even when alien delegates said terrible things about her people. Even when they called humans weak and stupid. Even when they laughed at human requests for basic respect. The Republic of Earth formally requests acknowledgement of our territorial claims in the Outer Rim sectors, Kim said in her clear, steady voice. Her words echoed through the chamber's translation systems, coming out in hundreds of different alien languages. A sound like grinding metal filled the air. It was laughter. Overlord Thrax of the Kronak hegemony was amused. His body looked like a giant insect crossed with a machine. Sharp metal pieces stuck out from his black shell, and his mandibles clicked together when he spoke. Another petition from the softskins, Thrax said, his voice dripping with contempt. How wonderfully quaint. Do they think their little words carry weight in this chamber? Other delegates joined in the laughter. The Vex made high-pitched screeching sounds. The Morgani rumbled like distant thunder. To them, humans were nothing more than a joke. A weak species that had somehow learned to travel between stars but had never learned how to fight. Far away, past the edge of Earth's solar system, Captain Lee Minho sat quietly in his command chair. His ship, the Silent Dawn *, floated in empty space beyond Pluto. To anyone watching, it looked like just another small asteroid. The ship's stealth systems made it completely invisible to alien sensors. But Captain Lee could see everything. His ship was one of 300 hidden vessels spread throughout human territory. For decades, they had watched and waited while aliens attacked human colonies and enslaved human civilians. They had perfect weapons, ships that could destroy entire fleets, technology that made alien military hardware look like children's toys. And they had done nothing. Because Earth's government had ordered them to stay hidden. To let the aliens think humans were weak and helpless. Whispered Communications Officer Yoon Hana, her voice barely audible even in the silent bridge. Long-range sensors are picking up Draknari movement. 3 battle cruisers heading toward New Sol Colony. Captain Lee's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. Maintain observation protocol. Continue monitoring. Do not engage. The words tasted bitter in his mouth. New Sol was home to 50,000 human colonists. Families who had traveled across the galaxy to build new lives. Scientists who studied alien plants and animals. Children who played in domed playgrounds under foreign stars. And the Draknari were coming to kill them all. Back in the Federation Council chambers, Ambassador Kim waited patiently as the aliens discussed her request. She knew what the answer would be. It was always the same answer. For 37 years, every human request had been denied. Every plea for protection had been ignored. Every cry for justice had been met with laughter. General Vorthak of the Draknari Empire stood up from his floating seat. He was huge, even by alien standards, with thick armor plates covering his body and glowing red eyes that burned with hatred. The Draknari were warriors who lived only to conquer and destroy. They had wiped out entire species just for entertainment. The answer is no, Vorthak growled, his voice like grinding stone. Humans have no right to claim territory in civilized space. You are barely evolved animals who learn to use tools. He leaned forward, and Kim could smell the stench of sulfur on his breath. Perhaps the humans need a lesson in galactic hierarchy. Perhaps they need to understand their place in the natural order. We shall be happy to provide such education. The threat was clear. The Draknari would attack human colonies again. More innocent people would die. More families would be torn apart. And the Federation would do nothing to stop it, just as they had done nothing for 37 years. Kim's expression never changed. Her diplomatic training had taught her to hide all emotion, to remain calm and professional no matter what horror she faced. But inside, she felt a cold fire building. Her knuckles turned white as she gripped her datapad tighter. The Republic of Earth hopes for continued peaceful relations with all Federation members, she said in the same calm voice she had used for decades. The same voice that had pleaded for mercy when the Vex enslaved human children. The same voice that had asked for help when the Morgani destroyed entire human cities. But something was different this time. A few of the more observant alien delegates noticed a strange glint in the human ambassador's eyes. something cold and dangerous that had never been there before. They dismissed it quickly. After all, what could humans possibly do? They had no real military. No advanced weapons. No way to fight back against the mighty alien empires that ruled the galaxy. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Park Sunyo held his daughter's small hand tightly as the loud warning sirens echoed through Harmony Station. The sound was so loud it made his teeth hurt. Red emergency lights flashed everywhere, making the long metal corridors look like the inside of a beating heart. "Daddy, what's happening?" 6-year-old Park Minji asked, looking up at him with big scared eyes. "Why are all the lights red?" Through the thick glass windows that lined the station's outer walls, Sunyo could see them coming. 3 massive Draknari warships, each one bigger than a city block, moving slowly toward the station like giant metal sharks. Bright orange light glowed from their weapon ports, getting brighter and brighter as they prepared to fire. "We need to go to the safe rooms, sweetie," Sunyo said, trying to keep his voice calm even though his heart was beating so fast he could hear it in his ears. "Just like we practiced, remember?" But before they could move, the first attack came. Bright green plasma bolts shot across space and slammed into the station's outer ring. The whole structure shook like an earthquake. Lights flickered and went out. Somewhere in the distance, people were screaming. Emergency doors slammed shut with loud banging sounds as sections of the station lost air and became deadly cold space. Sunyo picked up his daughter and ran toward the emergency shelters, joining hundreds of other families who were all running and crying and trying to find safety. Far away on Earth, deep under the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Cho Seung-gin stood in a secret command center that most people didn't even know existed. The room was filled with glowing screens and computers that showed everything happening in human space. He watched the attack on Harmony Station with cold, angry eyes. "Sir," said Intelligence Officer Nam Sejin, reading from her computer screen, "we're getting casualty reports from Harmony Station. First wave of attacks killed 427 civilians. Most of them were families." Admiral Cho's hands formed tight fists. For 40 years, he had trained for war. He had built the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Ships that could travel faster than light and destroy entire planets. Weapons that could turn enemy fleets into dust in seconds. And he had to watch helplessly while aliens murdered human children. "What's the Federation Council saying about this?" he asked, though he already knew the answer would make him even angrier. "They've officially called it a minor territorial dispute," Nam Sejin replied, her voice filled with disgust. "They say they won't get involved because it's not important enough." "And the Vorthak Syndicate?" Nam Sujin's face went pale as she read the next report. "They've started taking prisoners from the Kepler colonies. They're making humans work as slaves. The council says this is legal labor acquisition." Admiral Cho closed his eyes and took a deep breath. In his mind, he could see human families being torn apart. Children being sold like animals. Workers being beaten and starved on alien worlds. All while the so-called civilized galaxy looked the other way. Meanwhile, Ambassador Kim Ji-won was trying one more time to get help from the galactic community. She had sent another formal protest to the Federation Council. She had asked for emergency meetings. She had begged other species to speak up for humanity. The response was worse than being ignored. The galactic news networks made fun of her. The biggest news channel, Nexus News Network, ran stories with headlines like "Human Whining Reaches New Heights" and "Weak Species Complains About Natural Selection." They showed video footage of Draknari soldiers walking through destroyed human settlements, stepping over dead bodies like they were garbage. They showed human prisoners being loaded onto slave ships, their hands tied behind their backs and their faces blank with shock and fear. And the alien reporters laughed about it. On Lunar Base, which orbited Earth's moon, General Oh Tae-hyun sat in his office reading casualty reports. Each page was full of numbers that represented real people. Real lives that had been lost. Real families that would never be whole again. His aide, Colonel Bae Yuna, knocked on his door and came in. She looked as tired and angry as he felt. "How much longer do we have to maintain this charade?" General O asked, throwing the reports down on his desk. "How many more people have to die while we pretend to be helpless?" "Until the president gives the word," Colonel Bae replied sadly. "The civilian government still believes diplomacy can work. They think if we keep being peaceful, eventually the aliens will respect us." General O laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Respect? They think we're pets. Useful animals that can be trained to do work for them. They'll never respect us as long as they think we can't fight back." "The hidden fleets are ready," Colonel Bae said quietly. "Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. They're all waiting for orders. I know, General O said, looking out his window at the Earth hanging in space like a blue and white marble. But those orders have to come from the President. And the President still thinks we can solve this with words. Outside, more reports were coming in. Another human colony attacked. More families destroyed. More children made into slaves. The aliens were getting bolder, more cruel, because they thought humans could never stop them. They had no idea how wrong they were. The attack on New Busan began in the early morning hours when most of the colonists were still sleeping. Director Han Jaemin was awakened by emergency alarms screaming through his small apartment on the station's residential level. He rolled out of bed and ran to his window, still wearing his pajamas. What he saw outside made his blood turn to ice. Surrounding the massive space station were warships from 5 different alien species. The Draknari ships looked like giant metal insects with glowing red eyes. The Vex vessels were sleek and black, shaped like deadly arrows. The Morgani brought huge, slow-moving fortresses covered in weapon turrets. The Zephyrians had crystal ships that sparkled like diamonds but were filled with death. And the Korthak Empire sent their famous skull-shaped destroyers. New Busan was humanity's largest civilian habitat outside of Earth's solar system. It was home to 40,000 people who had traveled across the galaxy to build a new life among the stars. There were farmers who grew food in hydroponic gardens. Teachers who ran schools for children. Doctors who healed the sick. Artists who painted pictures of alien sunsets. And 12,000 of those people were children. All citizens report to emergency shelters immediately, Han Jaemin announced over the station's communication system. His voice echoed through shopping areas where families bought groceries, through parks where children played on swings, through quiet libraries where people read books. The first weapons blast hit New Busan's outer ring at exactly 3:47 in the morning, Galactic Standard Time. The station's shields lit up like a bright blue bubble, absorbing the energy and keeping everyone inside safe. But Han Jaemin knew the shields wouldn't last forever. He sent an urgent message to Earth, his hands shaking as he typed. This is New Busan Colony calling Earth Command. We are under attack by combined alien fleets. 40,000 civilians on board, including 12,000 children. They are demanding we evacuate the entire system. Please send help immediately. On Earth, President Kwon In-soo was pulled from his bed and rushed to the emergency command center deep underground. The room was filled with his closest advisors, all talking at once, their voices mixing together in a chaos of worry and fear. We have to negotiate, said his foreign minister. Send them whatever they want. Money, resources, territory. We can't give in to terrorists, argued his defense secretary. If we back down now, they'll attack every human colony in the galaxy. Ambassador Kim Ji-won's face appeared on the main screen, transmitted from the Federation Council chambers on Nexus Prime. She looked older than she had just days before. The stress of watching her people suffer was etched in every line of her face. Mr. President, she said, her voice heavy with exhaustion and grief, I have delivered our strongest possible diplomatic protest to the Federation Council. I begged them to intervene. I reminded them of their own laws about protecting civilian populations. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was filled with bitter anger. They laughed at me. General Vorthak stood up in front of the entire assembly and said, and I quote exactly, the prey species should know its place. President Kwon felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. For 40 years, he had believed in diplomacy. He had believed that if humans were peaceful enough, kind enough, reasonable enough, the other species in the galaxy would eventually accept them as equals. He had been wrong. The bombardment of New Busan continued for 3 long days and nights. The station's shields grew weaker with each attack. Inside, families huddled together in emergency shelters, sharing their food and water and trying to comfort crying children who didn't understand why the monsters outside wanted to hurt them. Director Han Jaemin sent message after message to Earth, each one more desperate than the last. Day 2 of siege. Shields at 60%. Food supplies running low. The children are asking when they can go home. Day 3 of siege. Shields at 20%. Some families are talking about surrender. Please, Earth Command, we need help now. On the 3rd day, as New Busan's shields flickered and began to fail, President Kwon In-soo made the decision that would change the galaxy forever. Open a channel to all Federation worlds, he ordered, his voice as cold as space itself. All of them. Every planet, every space station, every ship. I want every living being in the galaxy to hear this. Ambassador Kim Ji-won walked into the Federation Council chambers one last time. But she was different now. The diplomatic smile she had worn for 37 years was gone. Her face was like carved stone, hard and cold and filled with a fury that made even the biggest alien delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. "This is humanity's final warning," she said, and her words were transmitted across 1,000 worlds in 1,000 different languages. "You have attacked our civilians. You have enslaved our people. You have dismissed our peaceful offers as weakness." She paused, and in that moment, every human in the galaxy held their breath. In hidden military bases, soldiers gripped their weapons tighter. In secret shipyards, captains prepared for orders they had waited decades to receive. "Stop attacking," Ambassador Kim continued, her voice carrying the promise of terrible consequences, "or we stop pretending to be courteous." The Federation Council chamber erupted in alien laughter. They thought it was another empty human threat. Another meaningless display of weakness from a species that couldn't fight back. They were about to learn how catastrophically wrong they were. Fleet Admiral Lim Jiho sat in his command chair aboard the massive warship Indomitable Star. For 30 years, his ship had floated in the shadow of Saturn, completely invisible to alien sensors. Around him, his bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, their faces calm but their eyes burning with long-suppressed anger. The Indomitable was not alone. Hidden throughout the solar system were hundreds of other ships just like it. Battleships that looked like asteroids. Carriers disguised as ice chunks. Destroyers that pretended to be space debris. For decades, they had watched and waited while aliens murdered human families and enslaved human children. Today, the waiting was over. "Sir," said his communications officer, Lieutenant Choi Min-soo, "we're receiving the execution order from Earth Command." Admiral Lim smiled for the first time in years. It was not a kind smile. "All units, execute Operation Revelation," he announced over the fleet-wide channel. "Show them what we really are." Across human space, something incredible began to happen. Small patrol craft that aliens had seen for decades suddenly grew larger as their disguise fields shut down. What had looked like tiny scouts were actually massive dreadnoughts armed with weapons that could crack planets in half. Mining ships working peacefully in asteroid fields suddenly opened up like flowers blooming. Hidden inside were launch bays filled with fighter craft, each one faster and deadlier than anything in the alien fleets. Thousands of fighters poured out like angry bees from a disturbed hive. Even the asteroids themselves weren't what they seemed. Chunks of rock that had floated silently for years suddenly lit up with power. They were weapons platforms, armed with guns so powerful they could destroy entire enemy fleets with a single shot. The aliens had thought they were fighting helpless humans with primitive technology. They were about to discover they had been fighting the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen. The Draknari First Fleet was the pride of their empire. 50 massive warships, each one capable of destroying entire planets. They had conquered dozens of species and had never been defeated in battle. Their commander, Admiral Krex, was so confident that he didn't even bother to raise his shields when the human ships appeared. That was a fatal mistake. Captain Park Ji-hoon of the human destroyer Retribution watched the enemy fleet through his viewscreen with cold, calculating eyes. "All weapons, target the enemy battleships. Fire at will." The human ships opened fire with kinetic weapons that shot metal slugs at incredible speeds. The slugs moved so fast they were nearly invisible, traveling at significant fractions of the speed of light. When they hit the Draknari ships, the results were devastating. The first enemy battleship simply exploded, turning into a bright ball of superheated gas that expanded outward like a small star. The second ship was cut completely in half, its two pieces spinning away into space. The third ship had a hole punched through it so cleanly that you could see stars through the other side. "Target their command vessel," Captain Park ordered, his voice as calm as if he were ordering lunch. "Let's send Admiral Krex home with a message." The Draknari flagship lasted 30 seconds longer than the rest of its fleet. When the human kinetic round hit it, the massive ship cracked like an egg and broke apart in a shower of metal and flame. The entire Draknari First Fleet, the most feared military force in their part of the galaxy, was destroyed in exactly 17 minutes. Only a few small escort ships survived, and only because the humans let them escape to carry news of the defeat back to their empire. At New Busan, the aliens besieging the civilian stations suddenly found themselves in a very different situation. Human warships appeared out of nowhere, materializing like ghosts around the enemy fleet. The aliens had thought they were attacking a helpless space station. Now they were trapped between the station's defensive weapons and the most powerful navy they had ever seen. "This is Admiral Song Ye-jin of the Terran Defense Force," came a broadcast that reached every alien ship in the area. Her voice was calm but carried a promise of death that made enemy captains shiver with fear. You have 60 seconds to withdraw from this system or be destroyed. We are no longer asking politely. Some of the alien ships tried to run. They didn't make it very far. Human weapons reached out across the darkness of space and turned the fleeing vessels into expanding clouds of debris. Other alien captains tried to surrender, broadcasting desperate pleas for mercy over their communication systems. The humans accepted their surrender, but only after disabling their weapons and taking their crews prisoner. There would be no more attacks on human civilians, not from these ships. Meanwhile, on the planet Kepler 442b, something even more dramatic was happening. For months, the Vorthak Syndicate had been running slave camps there, forcing captured humans to work in dangerous mines and factories. The alien overseers had enjoyed tormenting their human prisoners, beating them and starving them and separating families just for entertainment. Colonel Kim Dong-hyun led the rescue operation personally. His assault ships landed right in the middle of the largest slave camp, and his soldiers poured out wearing armor that made them look like metal giants. They carried weapons that the alien guards had never seen before, guns that could punch through any armor and disable any enemy. Take the slavers alive, Colonel Kim commanded his troops as they surrounded the terrified alien overseers. They're going to stand trial for their crimes against humanity. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had been holding back for 40 years. And now that they had stopped pretending to be weak, nothing would ever be the same. 6 months had passed since the galaxy learned what humans were really capable of. The war that everyone thought would last for years was over in less than half that time. Now, in the rebuilt Federation Council chambers on Nexus Prime, everything had changed. The great circular room looked the same as before, with its high curved walls and floating seats arranged in perfect rings. But the beings who sat in those seats were very different now. Where once proud alien overlords had sneered down at human diplomats, now those same aliens sat with their heads bowed and their voices quiet with fear. At the center of it all, in the seat that had once belonged to the Supreme Chancellor of the Federation, sat Ambassador Kim Ji-won. She wore the same formal robe she had always worn, but now they seemed to carry a weight of authority that made even the largest alien delegates speak in whispers when she was near. Before her, kneeling on the cold metal floor, was former Overlord Thrax. His massive insect-like body, once so proud and threatening, now shook with fear. His mandibles, which had clicked with cruel laughter just months before, now trembled as he spoke. "We surrender unconditionally," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We beg for mercy. Please, show us the same kindness that your species has always shown." Ambassador Kim looked down at him with calm, steady eyes. There was no anger in her expression, but there was also no warmth. "You mistake our previous restraint for mercy," she replied in the same diplomatic voice she had used for 37 years. "What you are receiving now is not mercy. It is justice tempered by practicality." On the main viewing screen, President Kwon In-soo appeared as a hologram transmitted directly from Earth. Behind him stood the military leaders who had waited so patiently in the shadows for decades. Admiral Cho Seung-gin, who had watched helplessly as aliens murdered human families. General Oh Tae-hyun, who had trained soldiers for a war he hoped would never come. Fleet Admiral Lim Ji-ho, whose hidden fleets had turned the tide of battle in mere hours. "The old Galactic Federation is officially dissolved as of today," President Kwon announced, his words carried to every world in what had once been Federation space. "In its place, we establish the Terran hegemony. The rules are simple and fair." He paused, letting his words sink in across 1,000 worlds where billions of alien beings watched and listened. "Those species who attacked our civilian populations will make full reparations to the families of their victims. Those who enslaved our people will serve as laborers until their debts to humanity are completely paid. And everyone, everywhere, will remember the lesson they have learned here." In space above dozens of former Federation worlds, human warships maintained patrol routes that kept perfect order. The ships moved slowly and peacefully, but everyone who saw them remembered what had happened to the once mighty Draknari fleet. 17 minutes. That's how long the most feared military force in the galaxy had lasted against humanity's true power. On the bridge of his flagship, Fleet Admiral Lim Ji-ho stood looking out at the stars. His commander, Shin Hae-won, approached him with a report from the intelligence division. "Sir," she said quietly, "we've been monitoring communications between the former aggressor species. They're talking about us differently now." "How so?" Admiral Lim asked. "They're calling us monsters," Commander Shin replied. "They say we're cruel and heartless. That we showed our true nature when we stopped pretending to be peaceful." Admiral Lim nodded slowly. "Good," he said simply. Fear breeds respect. They should have learned that lesson before they decided to kill our children and enslave our families. All across the galaxy, the new reality was setting in. On worlds where alien governments had once made jokes about weak humans, those same leaders now studied human demands with careful attention. On space stations where human traders had once been cheated and robbed, alien merchants now offered fair prices and honest deals. The Vorthak Syndicate, which had run slave camps filled with human prisoners, now found their own people working in human-supervised labor camps, building homes for the families they had destroyed. The work was hard but fair, and they were fed well and treated with the basic dignity they had refused to show their human captives. Former slave masters who had beaten human children now spent their days carefully tending gardens that would feed human colonies. Pirates who had raided human settlements now worked to rebuild what they had destroyed, one brick at a time. It was justice, but it was not revenge. The humans could have wiped out entire species if they had wanted to. They had the power to turn alien worlds into glass and ash. Instead, they chose to make the guilty work to repair the damage they had caused. Ambassador Kim Ji-won stood before the reformed Galactic Assembly one final time to deliver humanity's message to the stars. Her words were transmitted to every inhabited world, translated into every known language, recorded for future generations to remember. For 37 years, we gave you the chance to learn that humans value peace above all things, she said, her voice carrying across the vastness of space. We offered friendship, trade, cooperation, and mutual respect. You chose to see these offers as signs of weakness. You chose to attack our families and enslave our people. You chose wrong. She paused, and in that silence, the weight of humanity's power could be felt on every world. Remember this moment, she continued. Remember that Earth doesn't bluff twice. And pray that you never again mistake our courtesy for inability. The age of human dominance had begun, not through conquest, but through consequence.